Welcome back to another edition of Irish Bandit Revolution. I hope everyone is having a great week. I, as always, am your host, the one, the only, the second Irish Bandit. This week starts a two-part retrospective of one of my favorite horror movie series. Now, when I first heard the premise of these movies, I thought, oh no, this is not going to be good at all. Oh, they're making another one? Oh, they made another one? They made another one? Really? And then I actually watched the first movie of this series and like, wow. I thought this would just be nothing but pure, straight-up torture porn. But the first movie of this series, of this franchise, had such a great story attached to it. And honestly, in the first movie, it had very little of that quote-unquote torture porn. So, today, this week, we are going to be looking at the first three movies in the Saw movie franchise. And we're going to start it off, of course, how we always start it off, with the very first movie, Saw. So here's a brief synopsis from the back of the Saw Uncut Edition DVD. Obsessed with teaching his victims the value of life, a deranged, sadistic serial killer abducts the morally wayward. Once captured, they must face impossible choices in a horrific game of survival. The victims must fight to win their lives back or die trying. Now, I think the character of Lawrence Gordon said it best in that technically Jigsaw, the Jigsaw Killer, was not technically a serial killer because he never actually killed his victims. They killed themselves. And in one of the later movies, I think it was Saw 4, we'll get into that next week, but you see an interaction between Detective Mark Hoffman and the Jigsaw Killer. Well, if you've already seen the Saw movies, you know who the Jigsaw Killer is, where he even says that killing is distasteful. So, basic synopsis of this movie. You have two guys locked in this dingy, dirty bathroom. You have the character of Adam, played by writer Lee Winnell, and the character of Dr. Lawrence Gordon, played by longtime great actor Cary Elwes. And they have to figure out what they have in common and try to escape before someone else kills Dr. Gordon's wife and daughter. I absolutely was blown away by this movie the first time I saw it. Because, yeah, I thought, oh, this is just going to be like gore for gore's sake. And there's very little gore in this movie, to be 100% honest with you. There's not that much gore, a little bit, but not to the levels that it got later on in the series. But it had an amazing story wrapped around it with Dr. Lawrence Gordon's character and Adam's character and how they were intertwined with each other. And I felt that the acting in this was, you know how you get some horror movies where the acting is just kind of so-so. I thought Cary Elwes brought a great flair to the character of Dr. Lawrence Gordon. And the surprise ending was just something you did not see coming. It's like, whoa! I'm deliberately not trying to say much if somebody hasn't seen the Saw movies already, but if you have, you know that ending, and holy crap was that mind-blowing. And it was written by Lee Winnell, and it was executive produced by James Wan, Lee Winnell, and Stacey Testerow. The cast is probably one of the best that I've ever seen, including Cary Elwes, Monica Potter, and Danny Glover. Wow. It also starred Michael Emerson and Tobin Bell as the titular Jigsaw, I mean. Cut, I'm going to do that again. Take two. Action in 5, 4, Saw was directed by James Wan, who's gone on to become one of the biggest deals in Hollywood. He's also directed Dead Silence. Yeah, I think he directed one of the Fast and Furious movies, and he's also one of the creative minds behind the Insidious movies. He also planned the story out with co-creator Lee Winnell, who also wrote the movie. And Lee Winnell also starred in the movie as Adam. And speaking of the cast, you have such a great ensemble here. You have Cary Elwes as Dr. Gordon. You have Monica Potter as his wife. You have Danny Glover as a detective. You have Michael Emerson from Lost as Zepp, an orderly at the hospital Dr. Gordon works at. And then you have Tobin Bell as Jigsaw. At this time, we didn't know much about Jigsaw at this point when he rose up from the ground. But he became a central figure throughout the next few movies. Now, Saw was only shot on a minuscule budget of about $1.2 million. But as of December 2004, when it was first released in theaters, it had made over $50 million at the box office, making it a bona fide hit. While it was a hit with the fans, it wasn't so much a hit with the critics, only receiving a 48% rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes website. But the fan score itself is that of 84%, leaving fans completely satisfied. I'm one of them. I thought Saw was a great movie, and it was only natural after the success of the first one that we got Saw 2. From the write-up on the back of the Saw 2 DVD set, it reads, "Jigsaw is back. The brilliant, disturbed mastermind returns for another round of horrifying life-or-death games. When a new murder victim is discovered with the signs of Jigsaw's hand, Detective Eric Matthews begins full investigation and apprehends Jigsaw with little effort. But for Jigsaw, getting caught is just another part of the plan. 8 more of his victims are already fighting for their lives, and now it's time for Matthews to join the game. And boy does he join the game with big, big consequences in it. The 8 other... This is the first time you have the big group, because in the first movie you had just Adam and Dr. Gordon. In this one you have like 8 different people with different traps. This is where it got to the torture porn part of it. You had the first trap with the gun hiding behind the door and shoots the guy in the face, and then you have the cremation trap. You have the razor box trap. This one, you know, this is a... I think this kind of suffers from the sophomore jinx, because while Saw 2 was really, really good, don't get me wrong about that one, Saw 2 was good, I don't think it really lived up to the first movie, honestly. But we can discuss that later. This is just a wild ride. This is where Jigsaw actually becomes the main focus. Like, you don't know, in the first movie you didn't know who the killer was until he stood up at the end. And then you have Jigsaw just coming out and being like, yeah, you know, this is why I did it. I got cancer, and then I tried to take my own life by driving off a cliff, and I survived that. You know, my body's dying from the cancer, but I survived a suicide attempt. So it's that at that point I decided that I was going to take on this mission of teaching people the importance of life. Because I think that's what makes a good villain. He thinks what he's doing is right, teaching people valuable lessons of cherishing their life. And again, that comes from something later on in the series that we'll get to next week. So yeah, Saw 2, good, but not as good as the original. James Wan didn't return to direct this movie, but he did return to co-executive produce the movie with Lee Winnell and Stacey Testrov. Lee Winnell also co-wrote the movie with director Darren Lynn Bousman. And it was also produced by Greg Hoffman, Oren Kulis, and Mark Berg. Sadly, though, before the DVD release of Saw 2, Greg Hoffman unfortunately passed away. The cast of the movie is another great choice. You have Tobin Bell reprising his role as John Kramer Jigsaw. You have Donnie Wahlberg as Detective Eric Matthews. You have Eric Knudsen as his son, Daniel. You also have Frankie G as one of the best characters in the franchise as Xavier. He's just this drug dealer, badass wannabe. You also have Lyric Bent, who would also go on to have a bigger role in Saw 4, which we'll get to next week, and Dana Meyer, who returned from Saw 1. I liked Saw 2. I thought it was a great progression from the first movie. It picked up exactly where it needed to be, and it showed Jigsaw as this interesting character. Like, yeah, he's a bit, I won't say nuts, but he's a bit of a sadistic character, but again, not really a murderer. He doesn't, he gets his victims to murder themselves. But that's not what he wants. He doesn't want them to die. He wants them to live. So I don't know if that makes things better or worse, but that's just my take on everything that happened. So from there, Saw 2 had a bigger budget of $4 million, and by the end of 2005 had raked in over $88 million at the box office. And of course, this brought around the need for a third movie. This became an annual tradition every October that a new Saw movie would come out since 2004. The overall consensus for this movie, though, was much lower than the first movie. Even audience ratings was not as good as the first movie. But that didn't stop them from making Saw 3. The synopsis on the back of the uncut edition of Saw 3 says, Jigsaw has disappeared. Along with his new apprentice Amanda, Shawnee Smith, get into more of that later, the puppet master behind the cruel, intricate games that have terrified a community and baffled police have once again eluded capture and vanished. While city detectives scramble to locate him, Dr. Lynn Denlin, Bahar I can't pronounce her name, and Jeff Reinhardt, Angus McFadden, are unaware that they are about to become the latest pawns on his vicious chessboard. Saw 3 is by far my absolute favorite of the sequels, not including the first one, which was fantastic, but Saw 3 is my absolute favorite. It centers around a man named Jeff who has been captured by Jigsaw. And he's captured by Jigsaw because he watched his son die in a horrible, horrible traffic accident where the young man who was charged with the murder of, not the murder, he didn't deliberately murder him, the accidental death of his son only got 6 months in jail because of the accident. Jeff didn't feel that was enough. So he spends all this time thinking about ways he's going to kill this young man and not appreciating things. So this takes Jigsaw and puts him in this dingy meatpacking plant and sets him through various traps of the people who were involved, like a witness who was there, the judge in the case who only gave him 6 months, finally meeting up with the young man himself. At the same time, Jigsaw has kidnapped a doctor who worked with Dr. Gordon to try and alleviate some of the pain as he is in the final stages of his cancer, where we just see Jigsaw is now this frail shell of himself. So the doctor is charged with keeping Jigsaw alive while Jeff is going through his tests. Unbeknownst to each other, Jeff and Lynn have a connection. I'm not going to get into what it is. You're just going to have to watch the movie for yourself. But like I said, I think that Saw 3 is by far my favorite of the sequels, and I think it was so much better than Saw 2. Again, not knocking Saw 2. It was a good movie, but I just thought Saw 3 was better. Saw 3 would be the last Saw movie that Lee Winnell would write, as he co-wrote it again with Darren Lynn Bousman. Oh no, sorry. He wrote it himself with story by Lee Winnell, and this would be the last time Lee Winnell would also be involved with a Saw movie. Again, it was directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, produced by Greg Hoffman, Oren Kulis, and Mark Berg, and again, executive produced by Lee Winnell, James Wan, and Stacy Testero. The cast include, once again, Tobin Bell reprising his role as Jigsaw. This would technically be the last time Jigsaw would have a hand in the actual games, but it wouldn't be the last time we see him in the series. Same with Shawnee Smith's character of Amanda, who, oh wow, after these movies I just got a huge crush on Shawnee Smith. She was so gorgeous. And a little bit of trivia from Saw 2. There's a scene in the movie where the character of Xavier picks up Amanda and tosses her into a pit of needles. Oh, that gives me the creeps. I hate needles. But unbeknownst to anyone at that point, Shawnee Smith was 5 months pregnant when he picked her up and threw her in that needle pit. So that gave everyone a, you didn't tell us you were pregnant? No. But Shawnee Smith was just a great addition to the series as Amanda. We met her in Saw 1, and her character just evolved from there. And I think she had a great run for these first 3 movies. And then, of course, you had Angus McFadden, who, trivia, one of his biggest roles, playing Robert the Bruce in Braveheart. That's pretty cool if you ask me. And Donnie Wahlberg reappeared for the first 10 minutes of this movie. But yeah, Saw 3 was by far my absolute favorite of the sequels. Once we get into next week's episode, I'll rank the sequels. Like, of course, this isn't including the original movie, because the originals is always great, but you know, the sequels just kind of go like this. Like you see it with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. You see this with the Friday the 13th movies. It just kind of varies from movie to movie. But I thought Saw 2 had a great Saw 3 had a great story. It had the perfect amount of scares, and again, not really all that bloody. Like people make these out to be the bloodiest movies ever made, and just, you know, body parts flying everywhere. Body parts weren't flying everywhere, especially when you got to my favorite trap of the Saw movies, being the Twisty Tim trap. So yeah, Saw 3, great movie. One I absolutely enjoy and could watch over and over again. Does that make me sick? I don't know. But Saw 3, fantastic movie. Before we wrap up this week, let's get some view stats on Saw 3. It was, by far, of the first 3 movies, it was the most expensive to make at $10 million. But raked in an $80 million total gross by the end of 2006. So yeah, of course that would bring the necessity for a 4th movie. This is all, by this time it's like, okay, yeah, no, we're doing these movies until they're not profitable anymore, and even beyond then. Again, it scored very, very low on RottenTomatoes.com, but the fan consensus was that it was better than the second movie. It getting a 71% of the fan consensus. So that tells you, horror movies are still big in this day and age. So I still love them. I'm always gonna love horror movies, and I'm gonna have a hell of a time coming this October deciding what horror movies to watch. But Saw is always at the top of my list. Alright, well that'll do it for part 1 of the Saw retrospective. Next week we're going to talk about Saw 4 through 7, or Final Chapter, or 3D, or whatever it is. I'm gonna share my opinions of why I think Saw 4 was probably the worst movie of the series. And we're going to get into Jigsaw, which is coming out this October, which I can't wait for. Alright, well, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. What is your favorite of the Saw series? Your favorite movie? Let me know in the comments section down below. Don't forget to share this video on any social media outlet of your choice. Over my shoulder right here, you're going to see a link to last week's episode where I'm talking about my 5 favorite animes. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, don't forget to tap that bell so you can be notified whenever I upload anything new. Like I said, next week, Saw 4 through Final Chapter. More content coming to this channel very, very soon. This coming Thursday, I'm going to be sharing my predictions for SummerSlam, as wrestling content is returning to this channel. Then we got next week's episode of Irish Bandit Revolution, and then the following Friday, we're going to be talking about 5 Mel Brooks movies that you should watch before you die. So be sure to be notified, tap the bell to get notified when I upload all these videos, because we got some great stuff coming down the woodwork. And then, you know, we've got Saskatoon Expo coming very, very soon in just a little over a month now. So be prepared for that. Guys, thank you so much for joining me this week. I will see you again next week for part 2 of this retrospective. Have a great week. I'm the Bandit, and I'm out of here. Take care, guys.